What does it take to win the Great American Race? We asked ourselves, and turns out we don't know. That's why we came to Indianapolis to Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing to sit down with a guy who knows a thing or two about winning the Indianapolis 500, Bobby Rahal. We'll also have a chance to chat with one of the young stars on IndyCar. That and so much more. You are watching Driven. Sitting down with the man who literally built this place, your bare hands, right? Bobby Rahal, in this beautiful building. I mean, listen, your career is, I would say, somewhat unmatched when you look at the longevity of your career, how you transferred from driver to owner, and all of the other things that you do as a businessman and entrepreneur. But what drives you still to this day?
I love winning. I love, of course, I love this sport, which has been really, I'm 71 years old. I've been going to racing since I was, I don't know, 7 years old, 8 years old. I was telling somebody the other day, you know, what am I going to do? I'm not going to go sit on the beach. I'm not going to, you know, go read books somewhere. I'm not going to do, you know, this is my life. And I love going to the races, and I love seeing this team become one of the best teams, which I believe we are. And, you know, we won the 500 a couple years ago. That was thrilling. We've got Takuma Sato back with us, who won that race for us. We've got him back with us this year. You know, we came very close to winning a few years ago with Graham. Hopefully he can have a great 500. You look at Christian, you look at the team, and you look at the people in the team, and I mean, that's what drives me. You know, and I think I speak for Mike Lanigan as well, as, you know, we want to win. That's why we're here.
I've been around racing now for almost a decade in a more than just casual way, and I just see these teams become family.
Yes. You know, I think it's because it's so, I don't want to say it's so consuming, the sport, but it really does. You know, racing is something that it's 24/7, 365. And it just kind of, you know, it just, you know, when you're first starting out racing, it's on an amateur level. You know, my dad would go to the races, my mother would be there, my brother would be there, I'd be there. You know, generations of families that are involved in the sport. They may not all be drivers, but they're involved in some aspect, you know. And you know, I don't know if it's exclusive to motorsports, but it is so obvious in motor racing. Just, God, you know, examples galore. Look at John Force. You know, Graham's wife, Courtney, her sister, both her sisters drag raced. Her father, in fact, he just won. I think it was his 156th victory this last year. He's 73 or 4 years old. I mean, it's crazy. You know, so there's, you know, family like that. Or, I mean, I can give you a lot of names in drag racing, a lot of names in stock car racing, you know, the Allisons, right? Petty's. I mean, these are multi-generational families in terms of having drivers. You know, you had Lee Petty, the father, then Richard Petty, you know, Maurice Petty, the brother, the uncle and the brother, and Kyle Petty, and so it just goes on and on and on. And of course in IndyCar you have the Andrettis, you have the Unsers, very famous names, and of course Fittipaldi.
Who kind of turned you on to Pietro? I know that he was racing, you know, abroad and kind of doing some different circuits and some obviously different types of cars growing up. I mean, he's a young guy. How did this come to be?
Well, I saw he raced at the 500 in a couple of the IndyCar races, and I think it was 2018, somewhere like 18 or 19, and qualified very well at Indy. I think it was in 2019. I believe he was 12th or something on the grid. I mean, that was good with a team, you know, a solid team, but not a Penske level team or what have you. So he out-qualified a lot of good drivers and good teams, and you know, I thought that was pretty impressive. And you know, if you looked at his record in racing, it was extremely impressive. Once I started talking with him and working with him a little bit, what most impressed me was his commitment and his, you know, his dedication, the seriousness that he put forth in this towards the sport. I mean, he's not here because he's Emerson Fittipaldi's grandson. He's here because he wants to be here, and he wants to create his own successes. And I just found that very attractive. You know, aside from being a great young guy and good personality and just super kid to be around, but he can drive and he drives well. And I think hopefully with us and together we can have a lot of success together.
Legacy, always important in sports, but auto racing just seems like it's all within the family. How about Pietro Fittipaldi, his first year as a full-time driver on the IndyCar circuit, and while he comes from a famous last name, he is trying to blaze his own trail forward. Growing up with a famous grandfather who raced, your brother is now very ingrained in the racing circuits as well. How cool is it to know that your uncles got you kind of into this, your brother's now doing this, your grandfather was doing this, I mean, and now you're doing this?
It's a massive privilege, you know, to come from a racing family, because it's a lot of people ask me, like, how do I start racing? And it is a difficult sport to get into, you know, to even know, like, where do I start? What karting track do I go? Like, what's the path to being a professional racing driver? And to be born into a racing family, you kind of have that path already set, you know? Obviously, as time goes on, things evolve and things change, but the principles of motorsport are always the same. So it was a huge help. It continues to be a massive help. My uncle Max Pappas is the one of the race officials or race stewards in IndyCar, so he's like basically the referee. So just coming into IndyCar, for example, he has a ton of IndyCar experience. He understands all the rules, so just being able to speak to him when we're having dinner and stuff, and him giving me the advice that I need to be able to perform well in my first year in IndyCar, that's like, you know, it's priceless. So it's a massive help, and it's a sort of a family business, I would say. It's a perfect fit to be racing for Mr. Bobby Rahal, and have Graham Rahal as my teammate, because they understand a lot of what comes with, you know, growing up in a racing family.
Do you look up to him? Is he mentor-ish kind of to you?
Absolutely. You know, I have two great teammates in Graham and Christian. Obviously, Graham is the veteran in the team. He's done, I believe, like 18 IndyCar seasons, and he has a ton of experience. Raced many different types of IndyCars, had many different types of teammates. So to be able to have him as a teammate and going into racetracks, for example, St. Pete, I went into the race weekend. I'd never driven a lap around that track, so I knew it was going to be tough. But just to be able to do like the track walk with him, and he's raced there 18 times before, or whatever the number is, and he's like, listen, this corner is the corner you want to push the car to the limits, you know, only in qualifying, you know, so use the other corners to build up your confidence. This is the corner where it's the riskiest corner of the track. If you make a mistake, most likely you'll crash. And just to have that experience and have someone that I can lean on and ask those questions is very important. It's just about having patience. There's a lot of tracks that I don't know yet, a lot of the street circuits and stuff, which you have to be very progressive with how much you push the car. But I do feel there's going to be tracks where I'm going to know the track very well. I'm going to be confident in the car. The team's going to deliver a fast car. So I feel like it's a perfect fit for me to, you know, to be able to race for a team like ROL. It definitely has that family environment to it. To have that passion is extremely important, and they have that from the roots, just like I did with my family. So yeah, I'm very excited, and this opportunity for me in IndyCar couldn't have come at a better time.
Do you ever just pinch yourself?
I do, yeah. Especially in the beginning. Like, I moved in the beginning of January to Indianapolis. I live 10 minutes from the team. The facility here at ROL is beautiful. As you can see, our car in the background, but this is our IndyCar Bay Area, so it's where the team keeps all our cars, our road course car, our oval car. We have Christian's, Graham's, and Takuma's over here, so it's a great setup. I was walking with my brother, just showing him around the facility. It was his first time here, and he said it before. I didn't even say anything. He's like, man, this is a dream. This is crazy. So yeah, it's definitely living the dream.
What drives you?
Competition and winning, honestly. We're here to win with anything I do. I like the speed of racing, but honestly, I love the competition behind it. I'm a very competitive person, and the drive is the hunger to win. The most important race in the world, in my opinion, is the Indy 500. And to be able to, you know, to compete in it is one thing, but the goal is obviously to win it. Because if you win the Indy 500, you're in the history books, basically, you know. That's the dream for any driver. So to be able to have the opportunity to race in it and have a team, you know, behind me like ROL is, which is a very competitive team. They won 4 years ago with Takuma Sato, the Indy 500. That's what it's all about, to be able to go out there and have that chance of, you know, creating my own legacy in IndyCar and one day being an Indy 500 race winner.
That'd be sweet.
That would be sweet.
That'd be pretty sweet, man.
Yeah.
How exciting is it to mentor somebody who wants to be that sponge?
Oh, it's fun. Yeah, it's fun because it's never work. You know, anything you ask them to do, it's never, oh God, do I really have to? I mean, it's like, okay, yeah, let's go, let's do it. And you know, that's, as I said earlier, about commitment and sacrifice and dedication. That's what drives your success, and he's certainly got a lot of that.
I think you getting into racing is such a fascinating story. Take us back when you first kind of fell into this, because your dad is an immigrant, comes over. You know, a lot of times you see, like Pietro kind of grew up in it, grew up around it, and that wasn't where you kind of came from. So, I think it's so fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up around racing, but certainly not to the level that Pietro. You know, his grandfather, one of the greatest racing car drivers in history, multiple Formula One champion, multiple Indy 500 champion. So that's a pretty intense environment to grow up in. For me, my father was an amateur road racer, raced at places like, in mid-Ohio and outside Columbus, or Indianapolis Raceway Park here just west of us. Road America, Carl Lake, Wisconsin. So I grew up in that area, but it was still racing. And although I have to say, as I've said many times, I never anticipated that I would race. I mean, in my family, you went to college, you got your education. Hopefully that led to a good job, and if it was good enough, maybe you could. It would afford you the ability to go out and race as an amateur, not as a professional. But things kind of fell into place. I started racing while I was in college, and between sophomore and junior years. My father had an old Lotus racing car that was well past its prime, but it was good enough for me. I mean, it was a free race car, and I won races, but again at a very low level, bottom rung of the ladder, so to speak. But I got to meet people. That's where I met Jim Truman, who is the founder of Red Roof Inns. And who played such a huge role in my career, in my life, and in my career later on. So it was one of those things that when I graduated from university in 1975, I thought, well, what the heck, what's 1 year out of my life? And let's give it a shot and see where we end up. And it was up and down for a number of years. I raced in Europe. I lived in Europe on 2 occasions. Every year I seemed to, I think, improve a little bit. That kept me going, and I just had this stupid belief that I could do it. As I tell young drivers, your passion, your commitment for what you want to do is sometimes more important than your actual talent. And so in any event, it all worked out in the end, and of course with Jim Truman as our leader.
That story of Jim and your obviously run at the Indy 500 and just how that 2 weeks span the highest of the high and maybe one of the lowest of the lows in your life when he passed away after you had such great success. You talked a lot about how you guys won it for him. How much do you still think about that? When you think back of that individual success, even though this is a team sport, team game, but how much do you think back on that and his involvement in your path to that glory?
I mean, of course, every time you come here to Indianapolis, it's pretty hard not to think about it. Even I think for those of us, and I'm still associated with people who were part of that team or worked for the Red Roof Inn Hotel administration. When we get people around, it's inevitable. All we do is talk about Jim, and it's very emotional. That he played a big role in a lot of people's lives, and when we all look back on it, it is emotional. And we're coming up on what 40th anniversary, which is hard to believe. It was bittersweet for sure, because he was literally, he passed away a little over a week after we won the race. There was no big celebration. There was no, it was subdued, I guess is probably a good way of putting it. And he never really got to enjoy the fruits of that victory. He put forth all the effort, the sponsorship, gave all of us the opportunity, guided us the first several years, and we really had a lot of success in that team. Our 82 was our first year. We won 2 of 9 races, and 82 was Rookie of the Year in 82. won a race in '83, won a couple races in '84, same in '85. So we went from like ground zero to being a very competitive team in a very short period of time. And that was really because of his commitment and guidance that he gave to all of us. And so, yeah, it was, you know, I think in the end it was just sad that he was not really able to really, as I say, enjoy the fruits of his efforts. You know, I won 3 IndyCar championships. I won 25 races. I won one 500, one Indy 500. I won some other 500s, but just Indy. And I'm never introduced as a 3-time IndyCar champion. Never. I'm always introduced 1986 Indy 500 champion. And that's the credibility, that's the importance that this race has, not just for the people involved in it, because it does change your life personally and professionally, but it also, you know, that's the one everybody knows about. It's that simple. And there are other races that are maybe more difficult to win, but, you know, it kind of doesn't matter.
You didn't want to be a team owner.
Yeah, no.
Why did you eventually become a team owner? What was the reason behind it?
You know, growing up in racing, you know, I'd seen a lot of drivers who I felt they became a little bit bitter about the sport, in the sense that they were replaced or the opportunities didn't come their way, and they felt they were still competitive, but just the opportunities didn't come. And I thought, how horrible to devote your life to this and then to start to hate it because it didn't maybe end on your terms. And so when I was 39 years old, well, a couple things happened. I signed for a team that could not live up to some of its commitments. And at the same time, their sponsor came to me and said, well, if we sponsor you, will you start your own team? And I never really had thought about it too much, other than saying I wasn't going to do it. And then I thought, you know what, I'm towards the end of my career. This is a way for me to stay involved in the sport. I can finish out my career the way I want to finish it out, and then take that next step. So it all kind of fell into place. And of course, having the sponsor make that kind of commitment to me was huge, because, you know, otherwise we couldn't have done it. And of course, we go out and we win my last championship the first year as Team Rahal. And it was particularly satisfying because I think a lot of people thought, there's no way, you can't be an owner-driver, even though A.J. Foyt was an owner-driver, even Mario Andretti was an owner-driver at one time. You know, a lot of people by that time, this is early 90s, thought you couldn't do both, and we showed that you can. I think the thing that makes the 500 so special, obviously it's history. It's been around 100 plus years. You know, the stories that come out of the Indy 500, tragedy, triumph, the human element, the small team, David and Goliath stories that happened over the years. You know, this race was on radio in the early 1900s, and, you know, way before TV, obviously, but, you know, people would sit around and listen to the radio, listen to the race. No other race changed my life, both personally and professionally, like winning the Indy 500. And that still holds true today. It's bigger than life. We've won the 500 twice as an owner, with Buddy Rice in 2004 and now with Takuma in 20. And you know, people say, well, what's the difference winning it as an owner versus a driver? And as I tell them, I think as an owner, you truly appreciate everything that goes into creating that victory. You know, whereas if you're a driver, yeah, you might have a little bit of a feel about it, but you don't really know it all. You don't feel it all. And I think this holds true anywhere, anything. It's all about the people. You can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have the right people, it's wasted. You know, and everybody has to pull together. You know, everybody talks about teamwork. You know, if you say it enough, you are one kind of thing, but it's not. It comes from commitment to a culture. It comes from a lot of effort, personal and group effort. I mean, and it's not easy. It's not easy to build, and it's not easy to maintain.
What do you hope your legacy is when it is all said and done?
You know, to help build a very successful team, that's a legacy. My driving record is obviously a legacy. There's nothing more I can do about that. My role in the sport, you know, I'd like to think that I've been a good representative of the sport. And certainly worked hard at that over the years. So, you know, I'd like to think that's, you know, part of my legacy. You know, the way I've done it, I've tried to be a gentleman in everything I did in the sport, in the business. I think that's important. That's important for me personally, but I think it's important for my family to know that people think highly of, you know, what I did and who I was and what I did. I think that's important. Whether it's children's charities or what have you in Columbus, Ohio, or elsewhere. So, you know, I would certainly hope that that people would hold me in high regard for what I did on and off the track.